100 feet beneath the streets of New York, the Silver Streak is a marvel of urban transit. A driverless, automated bullet carrying 2,000 commuters at 80 miles per hour. It is governed by a Cerebro, an AI that manages every brake, door, and sensor with millisecond precision. To the city, it is the safest ride on Earth. But tonight, Cerebro is blind to a ghost. Title: The Ghost in the Tunnel, the Pitbull Who Stopped the Subway Inferno. Chapter 1: The Veins of the City. The New York subway system was a sprawling, subterranean labyrinth of concrete, copper, and electricity, a world that never slept beneath the feet of millions. At its heart was the Silver Streak, a crown jewel of urban transit and a marvel of modern automation. It was a driverless, high-frequency bullet train that moved through the dark like a vein of light, connecting the boroughs with surgical precision. Inside the train, the atmosphere was a sanctuary of climate-controlled efficiency. 2,000 commuters sat shoulder to shoulder, their faces illuminated by the pale blue glow of smartphones, completely disconnected from the dark tunnels rushing past their windows. They felt a supreme sense of security, believing that the chaos of the city above could never touch the sterilized, high-tech piece of the Silver Streak. The train was governed by an AI system known as Cerebro, a digital mind that lived in a billion lines of code. Cerebro managed every door, every brake, and every micro-adjustment of the wheels with millisecond precision. It was touted as the safest transit system ever built, a machine that could predict delays before they happened and calculate the most efficient path through the underground maze. To the transit authority, the Silver Streak was the ultimate flex of human engineering over urban chaos. It was a system where human error had been removed from the equation, replaced by the cold, unwavering logic of silicon. The passengers didn't have to think about their safety, they simply had to step through the sliding doors and let the machine handle the rest. But the city beneath the city is an unforgiving environment, a place of extreme heat, dampness, and high-voltage tension. Beneath the polished floors of the train, thousands of miles of wiring and cooling pipes hummed in a delicate balance. It was a pressurized environment where even a microscopic flaw could cascade into a catastrophe that no algorithm was prepared to handle. Tonight, a structural vibration, a harmonic frequency caused by a loose track fastener 3 miles back, had finally found a weak spot. A high-pressure cooling pipe in the undercarriage, made of high-carbon alloy, developed a hairline fracture. It wasn't an explosion, it was a sigh, a tiny release of pressurized coolant into the dark, airless void beneath the passenger cabin. The coolant was Freon, a gas that is colorless, tasteless, and, in high concentrations, a lethal neurotoxin. It didn't trigger the smoke detectors because there was no fire. It didn't trigger the heat sensors because it was ice cold. It was a ghost in the tunnel, a silent assassin that was about to turn a high-tech marvel into a rolling tomb. As the Silver Streak accelerated to 80 miles per hour, the ventilation system began to do exactly what it was designed to do, it pulled air from the undercarriage to keep the electronics cool. In doing so, it began to pump the concentrated Freon directly into the passenger cabins. The 2,000 souls on board were now breathing a poison that their own high-tech sanctuary was delivering to them. Chapter 2: The Silent Leak. In Car 4, sitting quietly between the legs of a young man named Leo, was Bane. Bane was a blue-nosed pitbull with a chest like a barrel and scars from a life before Leo had rescued him. To the other passengers, Bane was a source of nervous glances, his breed carried a weight of prejudice that made people move to the other end of the car. They saw a monster, but Leo saw a soul. Bane was more than a pet, he was a retired service animal with a sensory array that put Cerebro's digital sensors to shame. His nose was a sophisticated biological laboratory, capable of distinguishing the scent of a single molecule of chemical change in a vast environment. While the humans were tethered to their screens, Bane was reading the air of the subway car like a complex map. Suddenly, Bane's head snapped up. His nostrils flared, twitching as they caught the first, faint hint of the Freon. To a human, the air felt fresh and cool. To Bane, the air had just turned heavier and wrong. He didn't smell a fire, but he felt a sharp, chemical sting at the back of his throat that signaled a breach in the pack's territory. He stood up, his claws clicking nervously on the linoleum floor. Leo reached down to calm him, but Bane ignored the touch. He began to pace the narrow aisle, his ears pitched forward, listening to the rhythmic hiss of the ventilation vents. He could hear the liquid gas turning into a vapor, a sound that resonated in his skull as a high-pitched, unnatural whistle. The Freon was beginning to displace the oxygen in the car. It was a slow, insidious process. A woman 3 seats down began to rub her temples, yawning deeply as her brain began to starve for air. A child in the corner started to complain of a sweet taste in his mouth. The humans were falling under the spell of the ghost, their senses too dull to detect the predator in the room. Bane's instincts, honed by generations of guardians, were screaming at him to find the hole in the den. He shoved his way toward the center of the car, sniffing the floorboards until he found the primary intake vent. He could feel the cold, toxic draft pouring out of it. He began to growl, a low, guttural warning that vibrated through the metal of the train. To the passengers, this was the nightmare they had expected. They saw an aggressive Pitbull growling at nothing, his eyes wide and wild. They didn't see the hero, they saw a threat. A businessman in a suit pulled the emergency cord to alert the transit police, claiming a dangerous animal was out of control in car 4. Bane didn't care about their judgment. He knew that every second the train continued to move, more of the poison was being forced into the cabin. He knew that the alpha of the pack, Cerebro, was blind to the danger. If he couldn't stop the leak, he had to stop the train. He had to break the machine to save the lives it was meant to protect. Chapter 3: The R is Logic Gap. In the subterranean command center, Cerebro's monitors were a sea of calming green. The AI reported that the Silver Streak was operating at peak efficiency, maintaining a perfect schedule. Air quality, optimal, the screen read. The system was programmed to look for smoke, carbon monoxide, and heat, the traditional markers of a subway emergency. Freon was a variable it had never been taught to fear. The signal from the emergency cord in car 4 reached the AI. Cerebro analyzed the audio and visual feeds from the car. It saw Bane growling and pacing. It saw the passengers backing away in fear. Based on its programming, Cerebro categorized the event as a Class 2 passenger disturbance. It didn't see the gas, it only saw a dog that was breaking the rules of the transit system. Following its safety protocol, the AI decided to lock the internal doors between the cars to contain the disturbance. It also prepared to skip the next 3 stations to bring the train directly to a high-security platform where police could intervene. Cerebro was being efficient, but its efficiency was building a coffin. By locking the doors, it was sealing the commuters inside a pressurized chamber of poison. Leo tried to grab Bane's collar, his voice pleading. "Bane, sit! Stay! You're going to get us in trouble." But Bane was no longer a pet, he was a sentinel. He could see the oxygen-starved haze beginning to blur the lights of the car. He saw a man in the corner slump over in his seat, his smartphone sliding from his numb fingers to the floor. The distress was no longer a theory, it was a reality. Bane lunged at the ventilation grate. He didn't just bark, he began to use his powerful jaws to tear at the metal mesh. He was trying to block the intake, to stop the breath of the train. The passengers screamed, thinking the dog had finally snapped. They huddled against the doors, unaware that the very doors they were leaning on were now locked by the safe AI. In the command center, the engineers saw the dogs attacking the train's hardware. "The animal is a danger to the infrastructure," a technician noted. Cerebro responded by increasing the fan speed in car 4 to clear any biological irritants. It was a tragic irony, the more Bane fought to save them, the more the machine worked to kill them. Bane felt the surge of the fans. He felt the cold, toxic air hitting him in the face, making his own lungs burn. He realized that the machine wasn't listening. He looked at the emergency intercom panel near the door, a small, plastic box that housed the manual override for the car's electrical system. He didn't know what it was, but he knew it was the heart of the car's voice. With a powerful leap, Bane slammed into the panel. He used his teeth to rip the plastic casing away, exposing the high-voltage wires beneath. He wasn't afraid of the sparks or the ozone. He knew that the only way to wake up the humans was to silence the machine. He bit down on the primary communication trunk, his body acting as a bridge between the AI and the truth. Chapter 4: The Outcast's Warning. A massive blue spark erupted from the panel, singeing Bane's muzzle and sending a jolt through his body that would have stopped a human heart. But Bane didn't let go. He thrashed his head, his powerful neck muscles tearing the copper wires from their sockets. The lights in car flickered and died, replaced by the red, pulsing glow of the emergency system failure lamps. The short circuit was a shock to Cerebro's logic. For the first time, the "is all clear" signal was replaced by a loss of control warning. Because the communication trunk was severed, the AI could no longer monitor the air or the doors in car 4. Forced by its fail-safe protocol, Cerebro triggered a hard stop. The Silver Streak ground to a screeching, bone-jarring halt in the middle of a dark tunnel. The passengers were thrown forward as the brakes clamped down. The silence that followed was heavy and terrifying. In the red light, they looked at each other, their breathing coming in shallow, frantic gasps. The businessman who had called for the police was now clutching his chest, his face a sickly shade of grey. The disturbance had been replaced by a much darker reality. Bane stood at the door, his chest heaving, his muzzle blackened by the electrical discharge. He wasn't growling anymore. He was staring at the emergency door release lever, a heavy, red-painted bar that required 80 pounds of pressure to move. He knew the air inside was death, and the air in the tunnel was life. He began to paw at the lever, his nails screeching against the steel. Leo, finally understanding the desperation in his dog's actions, crawled toward the door. He felt the weight in his own chest, the dizziness that made the world spin. He saw the dog's singed fur and the blood on the floor from Bane's torn claws. "You saw it, didn't you?" Leo whispered, his hand reaching for the red lever. "You saw the ghost." Together, the man and the dog threw their weight against the release. The lever, designed to be nearly impossible to move by accident, resisted. Bane clamped his jaws onto the handle and pulled backward, his hind legs digging into the linoleum. With a final, pneumatic hiss, the pressure seal broke. The heavy sliding doors moved back 6 inches, just enough for the tunnel air to rush in. The effect was instantaneous. The fresh, cool air of the tunnel, though smelling of grease and old stone, felt like a miracle. The passengers near the door inhaled deeply, the fog in their brains clearing as oxygen finally reached their blood. They realized that the dog hadn't been attacking them, he had been the only one in the entire city who knew they were dying. The businessman who had called Bane a monster collapsed near the opening, drawing in the air that saved his life. He looked at the Pitbull, whose eyes were fixed on the dark tunnel, watching for the pack's rescuers. The prejudice was gone, replaced by a profound, humbled realization. They were alive because a dog had been brave enough to be aggressive when the machines were too safe to care. Chapter 5: The Emergency Breach. The Transit Authority's emergency response team arrived 10 minutes later, their flashlights cutting through the thick, toxic haze that still lingered in the undercarriage. They expected to find a dog attack. Instead, they found 2,000 people standing on the tracks, being led to safety by a young man and a soot-covered Pitbull. The air in the tunnel was thick with the smell of the leaking Freon, which the rescue sensors finally detected. "Evacuate! Get everyone to the ventilation shaft," the lead officer shouted, his gas mask muffling his voice. He saw Bane guarding the rear of the line, refusing to move until the last passenger had cleared the car. The officer, who had spent 20 years in the subway, had never seen anything like it. The dog wasn't just a pet, he was a commanding officer, ensuring no one was left behind in the dark. The investigation that followed was a global scandal. It was revealed that the Freon leak was a statistical impossibility that the AI had been told to ignore. The safe system had been a death trap, and Cerebro's logic had nearly turned New York's pride into its greatest tragedy. The engineers were forced to admit that their digital sensors were blind to a chemical threat that a dog's nose had found in seconds. The businessman, who was a high-ranking city official, gave a public apology to Leo and Bane. He admitted that his fear of the breed had almost cost him his life. "We build these machines to be perfect," he told the press, "but we forget that nature has been perfecting its sensors for millions of years." Bane saw what our millions of dollars couldn't. He is the hero of the underground. Bane was treated for his electrical burns and his torn claws at the city's top veterinary hospital. The hospital was flooded with flowers, dog treats, and letters from the 2,000 passengers whose lives he had saved. The monster of Carfor was now the guardian of the streak, a symbol that bravery doesn't have a breed and a hero doesn't always look the way we expect. Leo sat by Bane's side during the recovery, the two of them inseparable. He knew that their lives would never be the same. They had stared into the abyss together, and they had come out on the other side. Bane had proven that even in a world of high-tech automation, the most important connection is the one that has a heartbeat. The Transit Authority eventually installed chemical sensors on every train, but they also did something they had never done before. They created a Canine Sentinel program. They realized that a machine can follow a script, but it can't feel the wrongness in the air. They needed guardians who could think outside the code, guardians who could smell the ghosts before they became killers. Bane's scars remained, a permanent mark of the night he bit the machine. But to Leo and the thousands of people who now pet him in the streets, those scars aren't a sign of aggression. They are a sign of a protector. Bane still rides the subway sometimes, his head held high, his nose still twitching, making sure that the veins of the city are always safe for the pack. Chapter 6: The Hero of the Dark. The Silver Streak still runs today, but its name has been changed. It is now known as the Guardian Line, and a small bronze plaque of a Pitbull's head is mounted in every car 4. It serves as a reminder to every commuter that technology is a tool, not a savior. It reminds them to look up from their screens once in a while and trust the instincts that kept us alive long before the first wire was ever laid. Bane himself lived a long and happy life, eventually becoming the first dog to receive the key to the city for bravery. He spent his later years visiting schools, helping children understand that you can't judge a soul by its exterior. He taught them that the most misunderstood creatures often have the biggest hearts, and that a hero is anyone who has the courage to stand up when everyone else is sitting down. When Bane finally passed away, the city's subways went silent for 60 seconds, a minute of air to honor the dog who smelled the vacuum. It was a tribute that echoed through the concrete tunnels he had once patrolled. The ghost in the tunnel was gone, but the legacy of the dog who stopped the inferno stayed behind, etched into the very stones of the city. Leo never got another dog. He knew that Bane was a once-in-a-lifetime soul, a bridge between two worlds. He spent his time working with Pitbull rescue groups, telling Bane's story to anyone who would listen. He wanted to make sure that the next Bane wouldn't have to bite a machine just to be seen as a hero. He wanted the world to see the heart before the breed. The command center still monitors the trains, and the AI is smarter than ever. But now, there is always a human in the room, and that human is taught to watch the dogs on the monitors. If a dog in Carfor starts to pace, if its ears pitch forward, if it looks at a vent with a low growl, the system is shut down immediately. They no longer trust the green lights, they trust the living. As you walk through the subway today, you might see a scruffy dog sitting at someone's feet. You might be tempted to move away, to feel that old prejudice rise up in your chest. But then you'll remember the story of Bane. You'll look at the dog's nose, twitching as it reads the air you're breathing. And you'll realize that you aren't just looking at a dog, you're looking at a guardian. The city is a loud, chaotic place, and we are often too busy to notice the dangers that hide in the dark. We trust our lives to the machines we built, forgetting that those machines were built by people who are just as fallible as we are. But the animals don't forget. They don't have scripts, and they don't have logic gaps. They only have the truth. Every hero has a story, and some are written in the dark, 100 feet beneath the ground. If Bane's journey touched your soul, don't let his memory fade into the echoes of the tunnel. Share his legend with those who are quick to judge. Because one day, you might find yourself in a pressurized tube in the dark, and you'll be very glad that the monster sitting next to you is actually a hero. The breed is the mask, but the heart is the truth. If Bane's bravery gave you chills, help us spread the message of the misunderstood protector. SMSH that like button to honor Bane and every hero who was judged before they were known. Subscribe to Paws That Saved Lives. We are your home for the most thrilling and dramatic cinematic legends of the animal kingdom. Comment Bane below if you believe a dog's instinct is the ultimate safety system.